Hugh, how are you?
I'm good. I'm very good.
I'm buzzing that you're here. Grew up watching you referee games. I'm not going to say I always agreed with the refereeing decisions in games. But I was looking back at your career, and obviously you were in Scottish football for a long time. You were on the international scene as well. You were the fourth official for the 2002 World Cup final. You had done the UEFA Cup final 1999. You'd done the Olympics. When you look back now at all the things you achieved, see when you set out in refereeing, did you ever see it getting to that point? No. Pinnacle?
No, not at all. I mean, I went into refereeing because I found myself sort of wandering into the bookmakers on a Saturday morning, and putting a wee line on and betting a coupon, and I thought, no, this can't be what a Saturday's all about. So, and my father-in-law, he ran a boys' club, quite a famous boys' club, North Motherwell Boys' Club in Motherwell. And at that time, I sort of got involved in that, started coaching the under-17s, and then I found myself putting nets up and washing strips and, and chasing boys and to get them to turn up. And the boys were good, they had a good team. And then one day, the referee never turned up. And we agreed with our coach, look, I'll referee the first half, you referee the second half. And that was the sort of thing that got me into it. And then all of a sudden I went back to playing. I went back to playing under 21 with Shotts Vicks. Come from Shotts originally. And I started playing up there and I was doing well, and then I got a smashed cheekbone, then I got a broken leg, and then losing time off work. And there was a charity tournament going on for the Shotts Gala Day, and it was a senior referee that was doing it for them, and he said, fancy getting into refereeing? Rest history. Went to the classes. He advised me to start refereeing schools football on a Saturday morning because the schools loved it. Didn't get paid, but it gave you that you could go and make mistakes, and it was fine. And as soon as I started it, I just loved it.
Got the buzz for it right away.
Loved it. Aye. It was unlike the house, because all of a sudden when I did some in the pitch, they were listening to what I was saying. Where when I went home at night, it all changes full circle, So no, seriously, it was. And then you get into amateur football. First amateur game was at North, the Bridgeworks in Motherwell, and it just all kicked in from there. I didn't even, you don't know how the systems operate. I didn't have a sort of mentor to look up to at that time and thought, I want to be like him. Wasn't really anybody like that. Once you get into the system, you then start watching the guys like, Brian McGinley in those days, and Bob Valentine, and I trained with guys like Les Mottram, so these guys were all, then you started getting wee bits and bobs from them. And then the guy in our local association called George Cumming, George became the very first full-time employee of the SFA regarding refereeing, because there was nobody in refereeing at all. It was all done with amateurs and administration people. So it was great, because then you could learn from George, and then you started to progress up through, and it was tough. I was going to say, because obviously there's levels beneath the pro game that would be a kind of sink or swim for some referees. Absolutely. I mean, you come through the amateurs, which can be extremely hairy. You're on your own, and you really are on your own. You'll turn up and you'll think, is there not a game on here today? And then all of a sudden the guys will start falling at the pub and that kind of thing, Then you get to the juniors, and the juniors got a bit of protection, because you've got a wee bit better discipline, albeit very tough. But you've got that barrier around the pitch. You've got that fence, which helps you alone. You don't have guys running up and down the touchline, the way you do in amateur football, because that was quite scary at times. So once you get to the juniors, but then, I just wanted through the juniors. I just wanted to do it and get through it as quick as I could. And I think if you referee in the central belt of Scottish junior football, you've had a good apprenticeship. And I don't think there's any coincidence there that the majority of your top referees are all from the Glasgow, Edinburgh, sort of belt. Ayrshire, obviously. Ayrshire has always produced top referees. And you can really count in the one hand the many guys outside that band. Bob Valentine, Dundee, top guy.
Yeah.
Apart from that, it's all central belt.
But it's probably a rite of passage as well, I suppose, going through those tough environments, because it's then preparing you for, as much as the higher up you go, you're more protected in a way, but you're more open in other ways, because then everybody's watching. And more people are aware of it.
Of course, and if you've refereed at Auchinleck and Cumnock and Pollock and these places, these grounds are they've got, first of all, more spectators than what even when you get to senior level and you're going to places like Albion Rovers in those days. So the juniors is a fantastic breeding ground to learn your to ply your trade and learn your trade for sure.
And at that point, when you were in the junior side of things, were you already planning ahead? Did you want to get to the kind of top level of Scottish football at that point? And how do they pick what referees are going to make that jump? Yeah,
I think once you get to the juniors, I can remember somebody phoning me one day. I was refereeing a Scottish Amateur Cup tie at Jackton, and this guy came onto the pitch at the end of the game, and he was very complimentary, from the team that lost. And he was very complimentary. And I thought, thanks very much. He says, I know somebody at the SFA. I'll be letting them know how you refereed. I went, all right, okay. And that, as soon as you get your name dropped in somewhere, and then all of a sudden somebody officially is coming out to see you in an amateur game, and then you then become involved in the sort of local association, which was Lanarkshire. And then you start to know that how you want to try and work your way through the grades. So when I got to junior level, you're then under, you're under focus. They're watching you all the time, whether it's to kill you or whether it's to promote you. And I was lucky; I was in the sort of promotion side. So in 84, 85, I think it was, I get promoted to become a senior assistant, a linesman in those days, a senior assistant referee. So you're refereeing the juniors, and then maybe the following Saturday you'd be running the line at Tynecastle or at Celtic Park or somewhere. And again, that puts you then on the touchline, but watching referees like Davy Syme and the top guys, and you're learning from that. And then once you do that, you then move up into reserve football as a referee. So you're then refereeing Rangers reserves against Hibs reserves, and again, in those days, the reserve football was very competitive.
Well, a lot of the first team used to go through the reserves as well.
The guys going by for injury, they were coming in there. I refereed Ian Durrant's comeback match after that horrific injury that Ian got, and I'll never forget. I know Ian. I know him quite well. I met him in Spain a couple of times also. And he said to us, I was as high as a kite, a young referee, Rangers Hibs reserves. There were 24,000 at the game at Ibrox, and I'd never been in Ibrox in my life. Subject to what people say, I'd never been in Ibrox as a young guy. Never.
So you're expecting a couple of hundred, maybe?
All of a sudden, you go to Ibrox and you go, a reserve game, right? And because everybody knew, and there were thousands outside, and they had to open, I can't remember what stand they call it, the one as you look out to the right, and they were all coming along the track and all going up into because there was a problem outside. And of course I was running about like a headless chicken because the adrenaline was pumping. And I ran into Ian Durrant that day. I actually ran into him, and I always remember Ian saying to me, he went, that was the hardest challenge I took the whole day, was the one when you hit me in the corner flag, so that memory and again experience, the refereeing in front of that type of crowd was awesome, So, and it's one of the memories, considering what you went on to achieve. I still go back to that day and think that was a good day that day.
I would have been looking at the crowd growing and been like, how big is this going to end up here?
Well, look, they kept coming in. I think at half time they were still coming in, because obviously Rangers weren't expecting that, a reserve game. They didn't think they realised, the even the media coverage and everything. So that was his first game back in.
And I suppose that then gives you a bigger taste for it as well, because you've had a crowd like that, and it's...
Aye, and there's somebody from the SFA watching you, and there were obviously somebody there that day, and they're looking, and then they're saying, right, okay, this guy could be... And then all of a sudden I found out that was about 87 or something. And then 88, 89, I started to move up to what they call Category 1.
Right.
Which then takes you, at that time, you were still running the line, which just wouldn't happen now.
Yeah.
But you're refereeing Stenhousemuir, Stirling Albion, you know, but you were away for the juniors.
Yeah.
So you were going to Stirling Albion with a couple of hundred fans, but the season before you were doing Auchinleck against Dunnipace, and there were 1,000 fans there.
Aye.
So it was a matter of, it was like snakes and ladders. You know, you climbed up that ladder and then you dropped down that snake as far as attention goes.
Yeah.
But the levels, you know, and you quickly work your way through then if you're successful.
And did you get a point through that where you felt yourself, this is it for me, I'm going to move up, I'm going to go the way with this? Was there a kind of defining period for you where the confidence was there as well?
I can remember going to the cup final at Hampden. I'm a big Motherwell fan, big Motherwell fan. Always have been. Followed them in the Texaco Cup way back into the 70s and all over the UK. And we went to the cup final at Hampden that day. That'd been 1991. And they beat Dundee United. Yeah. And I watched the referee that day, who was so poor, you know, for a cup final. I mean, he just let things go, challenges. And I remember walking away from that and thinking, I could do better than that. You know, but all referees think that. You always, I'm better than this guy and I'm better than that guy. And somebody was saying, I think I'm better than Dallas. And of course you do, you need that. And that was what gave me the appetite. Huge support for the SFA at that time, massive support. And then in 1992, they made me what they call a FIFA assistant referee.
Right.
So you were running the line in European matches.
Right.
And I think that was when I kicked on, because they paired me with Brian McGinley.
Right.
And Kenny Clark was the other assistant referee. So Kenny and I were touring Europe with McGinley, and McGinley was getting top matches. You know, so we were Real Madrid and, you know, all these kind of games. But the SFA sent you with him to learn from him.
I was going to say, did you get a lot out of seeing how he was? And
I used to go and watch him at Fir Park. You know, I'd be refereeing at Shettleston on a Wednesday night, and Motherwell were playing Hibs, so the Shettleston game would kick off at maybe 6 o'clock, and you would dive back to Fir Park, and I knew everybody at Fir Park, and would let you in the gate, and I'd go up and I'd watch McGill, and I'd say, great referee. And then when I ran the line in Europe to him, I went, he's not the same referee abroad. And I learned for that there's two styles of refereeing, European, or body language, domestic. Because you know the players and you're talking away to them. So that was a great learning process, you know, for me, and probably Kenny Clark would be, you know, would be the same. So, and then the year after, I became an international referee. So that's, again, steps you up, you start. But again, it's doing the snake, because you're then going back to under 17, that's where you start, under 19, under 21, you'll get a qualifier of the, or at that time, the UEFA Cup in July.
Right.
But your season ends in August. Because once the big boys, the referees come in. So, but again, I went through that relatively quickly.
And even at that age group in Europe, was there still a difference from like top flight in Scotland on how players communicate with the referee and how they act through the game? Did you notice it then as well? I
also noticed that the players gave you more respect when they knew you were an international referee.
Really?
Yeah. I can remember, you know, because they knew, and I'm talking about when you were more experienced, because they knew you were in Barcelona on the Wednesday night. You know, and I remember a great story. I was refereeing Barcelona, Dynamo Kiev in the Nou Camp on the Wednesday night, and on the Saturday I was refereeing Queen's Park against East Stirling. That's one thing the SFA know how to bring you back down to earth. And it was when Hampden was getting renovated, so there was no south is it the main stand?
Yep.
Whatever stand it is. That was completely demolished. completely.
You're going for the new camp too.
Dressing rooms were behind the goal in porta cabins, and there was a Harris fencing.
Jeez.
You know? But there's a wee guy outside on his bike, right? I don't see a wee guy, maybe teenager, but he knows who's refereeing, you know. And the players are saying to me, "Hey, Hugh, what the fucking I saw you on the telly Wednesday night, Barcelona. how do you come back to that? This, you know?" I went, "Oh, this is the biggest game in Scotland today for me. This is it, because it's my game." I said, "So no." And just as I'm talking to the player, it's at 2 minutes to 3, he points out, "Hey, Dallas, you're an arsehole." And I thought, the benefit of refereeing the new camp is they can all shout that, but you'll never hear it.
Aye.
Where the wee guy outside the Harris fencing, you know, bang, and it's something that always stuck in my mind, you know. So it brought you down to earth. Certainly did.
What was your first kind of, and without being disrespectful to the lower divisions, what was your first top flight game in Scotland? What was the first one that you kind of got?
First top flight was Falkirk Partick.
Right.
That being the Premier. What was it called, the Premier League then? Whatever it was.
He was at the Premier Division or something, wasn't it? It was.
And I can remember arriving at Brockville and going out the tunnel, and I was going out looking to see if the cameras were there, because the cameras weren't always there. They weren't live games then,
right?
You know,
it was just like Scott Sport. And
that's another story I'll tell you. It was Scott Sport, Jerry McNee. So I went out and I said, "This isn't. The cameras are here. Voting the telly tonight. Going to vote the telly." So Falkirk Partick was my first Premier League game at Brockville, which was a tough place to referee. You know, Brockville, because the fans were practically, you felt as if they were running up
like
in the pitch.
Tynecastle, innit? It's like a
Tynecastle's the same. Tynecastle was one of my favourite places ever to referee, because, especially under the lights, it's a great atmosphere. But Falkirk was massive for me that day, and I always remember Jerry McNee commented on me during, you know, I think it was Scotsport was a Sunday or something, and he actually mentioned me by name, and you know, they said a young talented young referee, did very, and that's it, that's the ball starts rolling, you know. Now it could have went the other way. I could have had 2 penalties wrong, but you know, and Jerry McNee was, again, became a big fan. He wrote with the Daily Express, and at that time the Express was the big newspaper in Scotland. It wasn't the Record or the Sun. And you know, it doesn't matter how good or how bad you are. If enough people read things, they'll believe it. Yeah. You know, and I was getting very positive media at that time. So, and I was very grateful for it, for the Roger Baileys, you know, at the Sun, and as I say, the Jerry McNees and the James Sanderson, you know, for Radio Clyde, these guys that Hugh Keevins, I always see Hugh Keevins as the more senior James Sanderson guy in his day. Hugh Keevins, again, was quite complimentary at times. So, yeah, you can't do it on your own. No. You can't do it on your own.
And how big a part do nerves play for a referee at that stage of your career? Are you, when you're at a game like that, and obviously you're wanting everything to go well, you want to give a good account of yourself, do nerves come into it at all, or are you just so focused on the...
I think it's positive energy that you have, and the big thing I found as a young referee, like after Falkirk Partick or whatever it was, that if I then went back to do, and this with respect to Airdrie versus somebody in the league below, you never became complacent. Of course you wanted to be in the Premier League, but you can't be in the Premier League every week. Your country's too small, the league's too small. So you had to make sure you continued that, whether you were going to, I mean, I refereed Cove Rangers, East Stirling, it was before Cove Rangers, they were a Highland League team, Scottish Cup tie, Cove Rangers, you want to beat Tynecastle or Easter Road, don't want to beat Cove Rangers. But those games come as your experience, but the Cove Rangers against East Stirling just gives you a massive, you know, experience of, you know, the crowd are on your back, the players are, you know,
you can hear every shout,
and they're less disciplined, the players, because at the senior level they're better disciplined. So the whole thing is a learning curve, but a great experience. But that's the big thing I always tell young referees: never become complacent. You know, because one day it'll just
coming in top
collapse in at top of you.
See for your point of view with the experience you've had, what would you say are the kind of main attributes that a referee should have?
I think you need, first of all, you need confidence.
Yeah.
You know, you don't get to that level without having coming through, as I said earlier about the juniors. I think you need to be a wee bit of an actor at times, because I don't think the way I would referee in a football pitch, and you know, they used to talk about the Dallas stare and the, you know, the strong body line. You never act like that in your business or in your home with your family. So you had to throw a bit of arrogance in. Yeah. And the arrogance that you threw in when you refereed was like a shield you were putting up, because you were in the player's environment. Yeah. You go into the Celtic dressing room or the Rangers dressing room for the first time and they really don't know you. You've no idea how intimidating that can be for a young, who's this? You know, excuse me, doing my team talk. I went, so you would be a wee bit, no, I'm doing the boot inspection. You don't do that now, but then you did. So you two, okay.
Assert yourself a wee bit.
All right, okay. So I'm in to do the boot inspection. And you'd come out and you'd shut the door and you'd go, oh, I can't believe that. I can't believe what went on in there. And people used to go, arrogant bastard, you know. And I wasn't. It was a shield that you had to put up there, because when you're dealing with these top players, you know, you had to make sure that they think, we're not going to get away with this today. You know, and you'd meet them in the street or in the town at night and something, and they'd go, you're a nice guy. No, but you weren't like that during the game. And you couldn't be. No,
and I suppose that's the same with the relationship with managers as well, because obviously there's some huge personalities,
massive,
on the sidelines.
Absolutely.
And like you're talking about Rangers, so you've got like your Tommy Burns, your Walter Smith, massive pillars of the game here.
But Tommy Burns and Walter Smith were pussycats in comparison to Dick Campbell.
Like John Lambie or something.
John Lambie. But Dick, I mean, Dick's just step back, you know, so he's been there since forever. And you come up, a young referee comes up against a Dick or an Ian Campbell, Bert Payton in the days at Dunfermline, you knew you were under pressure. You know, Walter Smith and Tommy Burns they showed you great respect, because, you know, once you got to that level, they knew who you were. I remember in an Old Firm game, it was a Wednesday night at Celtic Park, and there was an offside decision, and it was in favour of Rangers, and Tommy Burns, I just seen him out the corner of my eye, was actually running down the line with the assistant referee. He was actually
to remonstrate with him, just
behind him.
Oh man,
because Rangers went through and scored. Now I've got to be honest, I thought it was offside, because I went, but you know when one player's running out and one player's running in, and I went, and I looked to the assistant, and the assistant's shaking his head, you know. I can still remember the guy's name, Eric Martindale, was shaking his head, he's going, no. And so Martindale then runs to the corner flag, as you do, goal, and then he starts heading back to the halfway line, and he passes Tommy Burns on the way back to the halfway line. So the next thing, my buzzer starts going in my arm, you know, and I look through, Kenny Clark's waving me across. So I went to her, he went, you need to put Burns in the stand, you know, he's at the corner flag. So I went, Kenny. And the reason I said that, Tommy Burns is one of the nicest people I've ever met, ever. A lovely guy, always in control, lovely, just a lovely man. And so I went, right, okay, Kenny, no problem. So I went out and I says, Tommy, I says, you know the cameras are on us right now. You know there's a camera on me and there's a camera on you. I says, so all I want you to do is just turn on about and just got my tunnel. Okay, I'm not going to... He went, right, okay, Hugh, no problem. He just turned and walked away. And I went in at night. Of course, first thing you do, put the recording of the game. And you don't sleep till 2 o'clock because your adrenaline's pumping. And Martin Tyler and Andy Gray were the commentators. And Andy Gray, he says, obviously Hugh Dallas is just telling Tommy that there's a wee security issue going on somewhere, and Tommy's obviously way up the tunnel just to fix it out. I thought, brilliant. Because I've never felt as low sending a manager off as I did that day, you know, because he was just such a nice guy.
It's the emotions, isn't it?
And thankfully the decision was right. How the assistant referee called that right, I don't know, but it was right, you know. So.
And did you have that during games where it might be an offside or it's something at the other end of the pitch that you're relying on the linesman to look at, and you kind of grimace and go, I don't know if that's the right thing we've done here?
Oh, aye. Every game.
Aye.
Every game. You need to remember, as a referee, every game that you referee, you think you've got every single decision right.
Aye.
100% right. It's only when you go back and watch the TV and you think, oh my God, what have I done?
Aye.
You know, or I've missed that. How's that not a penalty? But at the time, you don't ever get to make a mistake deliberately.
Aye.
So, I mean, that's... it's been written about many times. St Johnstone Celtic up at McDermott Park, live in Sky, and John O'Neill, as you look onto the McDermott pitch, far corner on the left hand side, there's something going on, and the next thing I sees John O'Neill kicking his leg out, you know, and the whole Celtic end sort of went up. I just ran across, red. You know, and John O'Neill just looked at me and he went, "You've not got that in right, big un?" I went, "You've tried to kick him." He went, "No, I've tried to kick the grass off the boat with my boot." And I went, "No, you've no. Come on, John, off." And away he went, and replay. Oh my God. Every time I see John O'Neill, I need to buy him a drink, because that's exactly what he was doing. You know how goalkeepers go in and bang their boots on the post? It was equivalent to that. He just, there wasn't even a player.
Kicked it off.
Assistant referee standing a metre away. So when I'm walking over, you know, I'm going, pull it out the red. Assistant referee just went like that.
That must be worse for you though, because do you ever, or did you ever have moments in the dressing room after a game when you're like, you could have helped me out there?
Oh.
Like, does that, because you said it yourself earlier on, you never see that in a game. Obviously, the ref could be boiling underneath about something the linesman's no done, but they'll never show it.
Yeah.
But when you're in there after the game, kind of debriefing, and maybe somebody said to you, you want to have a look at that, that's not been right. But from your point of view, you're going, come on.
I was refereeing, again, just coming through. I just got to category 1, 1991 roughly, and I was refereeing at St Mirren.
Right.
Sorry, no St Mirren, Stenhousemuir. And at that time, the top referees also were linesmen.
Right.
So they were on your stand side line. And I arrived at the pitch that day, because I'm, you know,
ready to go.
1991, Stenhousemuir. And boy, he gets in, you know, folds the legs, gets a newspaper out, you know, doing the crossword. So didn't get a good feeling. So anyway, I come in at half time, and he was a very experienced referee, and I sat him down. I says, "The last place you want to be here, the day is here." And he went, "Oh, you know." I said, "Well, see if that's the case, you tell the SFA that you don't want the game." I says, "Because this is my cup final." I says, "And I need your help." I says, "So it's up to you." And the second half was a bit better, but the guy just didn't want to run the line, and he's no want to run the line to some whippersnapper, you know, Bunkle, you know,
who's buzzing about the game,
and he didn't even want to referee Stenhousemuir, never mind run the line at Stenhousemuir. So they things were annoying, but as I say, when you climb up the ladder, it gets a bit better. It gets a lot better.
Did you have any real setbacks on the way that maybe knocked your confidence or made you think, is this what I want to be doing? Was there any kind of points for you that...
I didn't get any setbacks that held me back, but I was refereeing one day at Bailison, and it was always tough to referee at Bailison, and I had a shocker at Bailison, the Bailison juniors one day, really just everything I did. And of course then, what I spoke about earlier, the arrogance kicks in, because you then...
Get the shield up.
I know I'm wrong, but I can't show I'm wrong, you know, and then you start to... And of course that just winds everybody up, whether it's players, managers, committee guys. And I got an absolute roasting in the Evening Times. And I thought the Evening Times went worldwide, you know, because then everybody was reading about this. So I get a really, really rough time, deservedly so, and that knocked my confidence back. Because then you've got to get the bag out the cupboard again and get back out there and get on with it. And I'm lucky, because there was nobody watching me that day. If somebody for the SFA
Yeah.
were watching me, that's the difference between right place, right time, or wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah.
You know, so I survived it, but it took me a wee while to sort of bounce back for that.
How easy is it to get it out the system? Is it getting back to games right away and just kind of moving on for it, or does it sit with you for a wee while?
I think when you're refereeing matches, it's similar to a golfer. You know, I don't know if you've read about Pierluigi when he had the yips.
No.
He had the yips regarding a great, fantastic golfer, and all of a sudden they developed this yip thing that when he was putting,
Right.
just before he would hit the putt, he would he would get this wee vibration, and he stopped golfing because he had to stop it. I went through a wee stage like that with penalty kicks.
Right.
And you take it back to you've got a penalty wrong, and you know you've got it wrong, and of course now you can correct it, but you couldn't correct it then. And then every time the ball goes into the penalty area, you start getting that, you butterflies and going, oh, that's no good.
No.
That's no good for a referee, because we always tell referees now when we're coaching them, give what you see, know what you hear. And when I mean I remember giving Celtic a penalty at Ibrox at the Rangers end, and I was so happy that night because I just gave what I saw. Because normally when you give a penalty, the whole penalty ref.
Aye.
And then you get the rippling effect for the other end of the pitch once they realise that a penalty's been awarded. And I always use that as an example and say, there's an example of, I think it was John Hartson get pulled down in the box. You just see the film, you go, penalty.
Yeah.
And everybody looks, and there's no noise, nothing. And then the noise comes, but by the time you've done it,
Aye.
and decision was right. And I use that when I teach young referees now. I'll say, just give what you see, and 9 times out of 10 you'll be right.
Aye.
But see if you hesitate and you show, it's like a dog can smell when you're scared of him.
Aye.
I says, take that tip for being a referee. Be strong, be courageous. You might not get it right, but 9 out of 10 times you will.
Aye. And see, in that moment, like, see if you've gave a penalty, for example, and you're no sure. Like, maybe sometimes you'll see it and it'll be cast iron, but sometimes you'll be like, I don't know. See, if you've still got 70 minutes of that game left, is it still there?
No.
Or do you just block it out till the game's done and that's it?
Because you don't think you've got it wrong.
Aye, in your head you're like,
in your head you've got it right.
Aye.
Now, there are plenty of people at half time want to tell you, because they've maybe seen it, I've seen a replay. Or, I remember in an Old Firm game at Ibrox, there was a Rangers goal disallowed. Assistant referee gave offside, and Wally Young was my fourth man. And Wally was coming up with tunnel at half time, and he says, don't turn the telly on. In the Ibrox restroom there was a television up in the corner. He went, don't turn the telly on. I went, how? He went, wasn't he offside? So he says, and the assistant referee's got to go back out for another 45 minutes.
Aye.
So
Aye.
I came in and I looked at the assistant, I went, well done, good, great,
Aye.
tighten up, kicked his arse.
Aye.
But at that time I went, well done, come on guys, keep going, this is brilliant. But when we went into the dressing room, the telly was on. And the telly's never on in the referee's dressing room, because you always tell them, don't put the telly on. You have it on at 1:30 to 2:45. Right. And then when you go, telly
that's it off. Aye.
But the telly was on. Obviously, I know the sort of general secretary at that time had obviously come down.
Aye, just so you would see it when you came in.
When we walked in, Wally Young just went on, put the telly off right away. So, because there's no benefit in the late, great Tom Wharton always told me, Hugh, if you make one mistake at one end, don't balance it at the other end, because then you've doubled your mistakes. And I always thought, that always stuck with me, and I thought, it's great advice that, you might have it might be balanced and say, well, I get that wrong, but you get that one wrong.
Aye.
But if you just go and say, I've got one wrong and accept that, it's finished. So, yeah, that was always the policy that I took as a referee.
And that would, am I right in saying that was your first Old Firm game, the free each one? 1996?
Aye, yeah.
What a start that is.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Does anything change for you?
There was a punter ran across the pitch and passed me. Just he passed by me. sees this guy going by. I went, where's he going? And he just disappeared into the enclosure or something. You know, it was a bizarre day.
Did your prep change for games like that, or were you the exact same?
The only thing it prepped is that before an Old Firm game, we had a wee thing that we always went to. Our local, the Claudio restaurant in Motherwell. We always went there. We know the people that own it. Lovely couple, and we always went there.
Right.
Because the first Old Firm game, I think it was a Saturday. That game, I went to Friday night, and the game went really well. So you automatically
you keep going with it.
I'm going to go there all the time. So that was the only prep. I'd get up early in the morning. I'd go for a walk with the dog, clear my head, that kind of thing. Family knew not to come near me.
Aye.
You know, you were on the ceiling.
Aye.
Because you knew the importance of the game. Once you get there, you're fine. Nothing different when you're there, warming up. Everything's the same. You don't change anything. I remember Campbell Ogilvie coming into the dressing room at the end of the game. Pierre Van Hooijdonk scored, I think it was the equaliser.
Aye, the third.
Goal,
That's right, aye.
And he launched himself into the Celtic end.
Yep.
And he's already booked in the game.
So, so at that point, that was a yellow for another, right?
That's automatic.
Aye.
You know, it's a second yellow card. So that's his big Pierre he was a big diamond. And he scores a goal, and I mean, I had goosebumps that day because the noise at the Celtic end, you know, when they scored, and he launched himself into the crowd, and you know, I went, oh no.
Aye, that's the kind of thing you just don't need.
Aye, and I just looked away the other way, and I didn't care. I went, I don't care if the SFA say I don't care. And I went into the dressing room at the end of the game. And Campbell Ogilvie came in, who was the Rangers General Secretary, and he came in and he says, thanks for not putting Hooijdonk off. And I went, and I thought he was being sarcastic. And I went, what? He went, thanks. And the police commander was there, and he went, thanks. He says, we had a riot at that end, you know, if that had happened. And I get praised for it. You know, I get praised for it. And I remember Big Van Hooijdonk, I spoke to him a few weeks later, and I said that to him, and he went, I'll do the same again. He said, because you're no in control of your body. When you score an equalised, I think it was about 86 minutes.
It's a stupid rule.
Of course it is. Now, the rules there, it's only in Scotland they use that rule. It's not in Europe.
Aye.
We tell our referees in Europe, don't caution guys, unless they climb up in the fence.
Aye.
But the SFA have always thought that if there are disabled people in the front row and people are clambering down, and I'm saying, well, that's not my problem. That's up to the security people. And I think we should deal with things on the pitch and in and off the pitch like that. But that was the
emotion takes over at moments like that. It's a totally different way of things. See in those games, and it's maybe the same with cup finals and that as well. Do you manage the players differently? If you were doing like a Division 1 game or a Division 2 game, and you're in that Rangers Celtic bubble, and obviously you'll know from being in the middle, one tackle can just kick off, and that's it. But how do you manage the players in that environment? I
don't think you address the game any. The only thing I changed was the players could have called me anything they wanted to call me. You know, no problem. Nobody can hear it. I can hear it, but I've got bigger fish to fry during the game. I've got the clear tackles that the yellow card just pops out the pocket without saying, what did you caution him for? Oh, he called me an idiot, he called me an arsehole, he called me an All Firm game, an arsehole.
Aye.
Maybe when they play Stranraer in the cup and somebody can hear it, that's different. People will say, you're not applying the same laws. It's common sense, it's management of the game. A referee's job, Gary, is to keep the players on the pitch.
Yeah.
That's part of the role of a referee, is to manage the players, manoeuvre your way through the game. And of course, if guys step over the line, then you need to deal with them. But generally, you try to say, I need to get through this. And the longer the game goes, in games like that, you're saying, right, okay, I used to be a referee that went for an early caution. And now I watch referees in Old Firm games who are very lenient early doors. And I don't think that's a great tactic, because I think you need to set your stall out very early and say, no, that's just not going to happen. Because we know coaches, I'll tell players, so remember, you do him early.
Aye.
Okay.
Your first one's free.
Your first one, you get your first one for nothing. If it's 2 minutes. Where I was aware of that. I knew. I went, no, that's just not going to happen. And, you know, it worked. Generally, it worked. Of course, if you end up with 9 yellow cards in a game, they'll say, that was because of the first one. You know, he went too early. And I can accept that criticism. But generally, that was my style. But you didn't really referee. Did you give them a wee bit more licence? Verbally, I would say only. Only. Technical offences, maybe. But size and tackles, you know, somebody running through and goal getting their shirt pulled, it's the same for everybody. Same for everybody.
And see I'm moving along a bit, but the game at Celtic Park, obviously that game that everybody talks about.
What game is that?
Would that have been your most challenging game that you've had from a career point of view? Just with the whole, I'm always curious when you watch that game back, and obviously it was the Sky Games, it was the 6:05 kick-off on a Sunday night, I'm sure it was a bank holiday weekend.
Correct.
See, before the game, can you sense if there's a bit of there's always poison in there when they play, like, let's not kid ourselves on, but can you sense it when you're going about the stadium, you're doing your warm-up, that things are a wee bit different?
No, not so much in the stadium. I was never brought up in an old firm environment. That wasn't. I was a Shotts Bonaccord ball boy. I was a Shotts Bonaccord supporter of my dad. My dad was in the Bonaccord committee for, God rest him, 35 years. So that was my upbringing. The Rangers Celtic thing never. I couldn't understand it. I couldn't. And to be honest, the majority of my pals weren't all firm fans. You know, I'd Celtic pals, I'd Rangers pals, but no that went to Ibrox and Celtic Park every week. As I say, we were big junior fans. So when you started refereeing, I used to look into the crowd and go, why are these folk behaving like that? It's only a game of football. But of course, you know, it's more than football to these people. But that particular day, I went down to our local gym, the way I always did on a Sunday, for a swim and a sauna, because you used to quite rightly said it was the last 6:05 kick-off game ever. And we went down there and had a coffee and scone and, you know, messed about. And my wife was with us, and we came up in the car, and I can remember coming up in the car, and there were grass bank, and there were a lot of fans all lying drinking.
Early doors.
This would be about 1 o'clock, and they were all, you know, and I thought, wow, what kind of state will they be in at 6 o'clock at night? When I go to the stadium, no, I loved going to Celtic Park. I loved the way they treated you was always very professional, and I didn't know, because it was only afterwards that people would say, oh, that was the league decider, because it wasn't the league decider, because there
was a sizable gap at that point as well.
A sizable gap, and also I think Rangers had another 4 games to play or something, and then that. Anyway, they won it at Celtic Park, which everybody knows. And even, honestly, even on the way home that night, wasn't he, you know, of course, what happened at the park, and, you know, that happens. And it was only then you start watching the highlights and you listen to the news and you hear about the violence in the streets and you know, what's happened in domestic violence and all these kind of things. And then the next day, Sky, you know, want to come out and interview, and it all starts to unfold. But you know, the match itself was very, very challenging, very challenging for sure. Players that you would normally talk to try and get them on side, and I always used guys like Paul Lambert, who had a really good relationship. Paul was a nice guy. You'd say to Paul, tell so-and-so, come on, is you ready on a yellow card? Right, okay. You know, and I'm not saying he would run across right away, but you would see it maybe the next time the ball went out to play. You would talk to, you know, the Barry Fergusons, the Ian Fergusons, the Peter Grants, the guys that you knew were hard. Yeah. You wanted to keep them on your side. And I used to tell them, I used to say, guys, I can't get through the game today without you. I need your help. There's no way I can referee 22 guys pumping adrenaline unless you help. No, and generally they were fine. But that day, it didn't work. You know, there wasn't anybody talking to anybody. It was just a tough game. You know.
Could you see from I think the first flashpoint was the Stefan Mahe.
Yep.
And obviously at that point he's lost it, and you've sent him off. There, are you thinking, I've got to keep a lid on this here, because in those games it could be quiet for 25 minutes and a flashpoint just sets it.
Aye, probably when I look back, I mean, if you've got a player who's threatening another player, right, what he's going to do to him, you can't allow that. Because if anything happened to that player, I think it was Neil McCann.
Aye.
If anything happened to that player, and Neil McCann's getting wheeled off in an ambulance, to a hospital, and Neil McCann then comes back and says, the referee heard him threaten me. He knew, and he never took any action. And I'm not going to allow myself, to be put in that position. So I'm well aware that when a player's cautioned in the game, that a caution is a warning.
Aye, you're hoping that calms the situation.
The player's got to take that in. The captain's got to take that in. But nobody was taking it in that day. And I think the fact that I think it was 1-0 at that time. I think it was 1-0.
Yeah, because I think Rangers scored early.
Aye, I think it was 1-0, and then they were down to 10 men. And I've no doubt that definitely was the flashpoint. That I don't know whether Celtic felt they couldn't get back into the game because Mahi was an important player for for Celtic. But would have done it differently? No, because would Mahi have done it differently? Maybe, but again, as we spoke earlier about when Van Hooijdonk was celebrating, the emotions take over, and probably old firm managers will always tell their players, you've got to keep your discipline, guys. We don't want to get down to 10 men, or we don't want to get down to 9 men, because nowadays there were also a lot more Scots playing, and the games were now, I don't see the old firm game as particularly.
It's not got the same edge on the pitch.
Definitely not got the same edge.
No.
But it's got the same incidents. It's got the same penalty incidents and VAR and things. But the actual, when we refereed in our era in the 90s and the noughties, all firm games were different class. They were great. And probably people before my time, going back to the John Gregg and Billy McNeil days, and they would say the same. Scots. Where I think a lot of the foreigners now, they're coming in 2 seasons, out, they don't really know, what it's all about.
No, it's a job, innit? It's not they've not grew up kind of in that environment, and
they talk about the Old Firm game and the biggest derby in the world, and it's up there. But I was at a game 2 weeks passing Tuesday, in Galatasaray Fenerbahce.
Aye,
there's a derby.
Aye. I went to see Rangers play Fenerbahce in the Champions League qualifiers, and on the way back I was like, Jesus man, this is, you think a game here has got an atmosphere. They were in the stadium 6 hours before the game kicked off, and we were like up in the gods, and you're looking about and you're like, this is fanatic.
Well, it doesn't matter what Old Firm game it is. If a kick-off's at 3 o'clock, there is no way is that stadium full at 1 o'clock. No. You go and do the Cairo derby, in Egypt.
Aye, just crazy.
When we arrived 2 hours before the kick-off, the gates were locked. Crowd are in, and they're just, it's going wahoo. You go to Uruguay in these places. So to give the Old Firm fans their due, they're not as, these big derbies are same game in the pitch as an Old Firm game, but the Old Firm games are definitely special for sure.
See that day when obviously that's happened, you're getting on with the game, the coin incident happens, you've got fans coming on the pitch trying to get to you. Where's your head at that point? Because that's
getting stitched.
If that happens at any other line of work, there'd be an element of fear there, because obviously you're protected, but then that happens in your line there. Obviously the images are with the blood and the players around you. I think it was Harold Bratback and Colin Hendry, and then as soon as that finishes, then you give the penalty to Rangers, and like the place just erupts. But at that point, how is your mindset then? Because you're trying to keep everything
reboot.
Yeah,
I just reboot.
Is it easy to do in that environment?
Well, I knew it was close to half time, and when it happened, the Celtic doctor came on and said, we'll Vaseline it and we'll fix it at half time. John Robotham was the fourth official. I don't think John had refereed an Old Firm game,
right?
So to throw him in to throw him into that environment.
That'd be his worst nightmare at that point.
It would have been his.
Aye.
I remember the guy brought the smelling salts in at half time, and I said, "John, they're for me." They're for me, John. He went, "Oh, sorry."
He's in check. You're all right. Like.
Aye.
See, at half time though, are you good to go for the second half, or are you thinking I just need to keep this contained?
No,
for going out there.
Not at all. I'm ready to go.
Aye.
They stitched me up at half time. I phoned my wife. Phoned the wife at the house. Says, "Look, everyone's fine." She was upset, obviously.
Yeah.
I went, "It's fine. It's not a problem." What was it? No idea. I think it was a wee rock or something. And the second half went out and did the game. But I knew, that the game was going to be tough.
Aye.
Because it was an old firm game. I think it was at 2-0 at half time.
Yep.
So you're out there for 45 minutes, and that's your job.
Yeah.
That's your job. A lot of countries, the game would have been abandoned.
Yeah.
A lot of countries. I can remember telling UEFA, because I was then refereeing the UEFA Cup final just about 2 weeks later in Moscow, and UEFA had said to me, they says, if that happens in a UEFA match, the game would be stopped, finished.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to Kenny Scott, and I can't remember the other guy's name, who were the top city police commanders for Celtic Park, Ibrox, Hampden. And I says, how would they have felt if I'd went like that? Game's a bogey. He went, "Oh, it would have been a disaster." He says 60,000 fans spilling out onto the streets with no warning.
On a bank holiday weekend.
No warning.
Aye.
All of a sudden, out you go. He says the police start to prepare for exiting 15, 20 minutes before the end of the game, start getting people into positions. Roads are all blocked off and things like that. He went, "Oh, that's just a..." And I can fully understand that. Fully understand that, from a policing point of view.
Yeah.
And a health and safety point of view. You'd never want to see what happened, obviously, before, with fans coming downstairs and barriers and disasters, which so no, the police call the shots and something like that to let them get organised.
And you touched on it a wee bit there with your wife phoning you at half time. Obviously the aftermath of that game, and you get targeted massively, and there was a whole thing with the Celtic, I don't know if it's the chairman or the CEO, there was a whole psychologist, and there was all this.
That was a deflection.
But from your point of view, how hard is that when then your family come into that equation as well, and it's not just about you doing your job and going home?
I think, to be honest, that was the funniest moment of the whole thing. The whole thing was very serious, of course it was. But when that broke on the Sunday, I'd get a phone call from a very, very senior journalist on the Thursday to tell me there was an incident happened, I think, on the Wednesday night in a game, a Celtic game, away from home.
Right.
And there's quite a serious incident, I think, it happened in the dressing rooms, tunnel area. And the journalist told me that they'd got the Sunday journalists into a corner on the Thursday, because the Sunday journalists meet on a Thursday for the Sunday papers or something. And they broke this psychologist video thing, and he said it was a deflection away from anything else, so I think it was who was the CEO at that time? McDonald.
I can't remember his first name.
Alan McDonald. So we laughed, to be honest. We actually laughed at it, because that's just, I was accused of, touching Rangers players, but not touching Celtic players and touching this, and you could throw that at me at any teams. So anyway, that quickly.
Aye.
I think I would have thought they would have regretted that because it didn't make the club, in my opinion, look great. But it was different people then, in comparison to how the clubs run now, in my opinion.
And within the games and even in Scottish football, who was the characters towards you on the pitch? Because you look at Scottish football, there's always a mouthy player in every team. Every single team from Premiership to Division 2 has got them, but was there any when you were refereeing you'd be like, oh, here we go?
Aye. You've not got enough time. The character, there is between characters and mouthy players.
Aye.
Gascoigne, it was an absolute pleasure to referee Gascoigne, to watch him on the pitch, what he could do. Laudrup, Larson, Larson. Di Canio, You know, these guys were brilliant. As far as mouthing goes, John Hughes, Big Yogi. Big Yogi was incredible on the pitch. I'm trying to pick my words here. I'd run-ins with Yogi as a player, as a manager, you know, everywhere. He didn't like me.
Right.
Simple as that. You know, I remember Falkirk had won the league.
Right.
Had actually won the league and was getting promoted to the Premier League or whatever it was called then. And they were playing Inverness Cali, and it was Falkirk's last game at Brockville.
Right.
And I was refereeing it. And Inverness Cali beat them.
Right.
2-1, 1-2-1, can't remember. But the league championship trophy was getting delivered that day for them to, you know, the first division or championship, whatever it was. And the place was full. Now, Yogi, who was at the halfway line, was saying that the ball was out of play in the opposite diagonal before it was whipped across for the goal for Cali to score. I think it was John Robertson that scored it. And I says, so I'm looking at the assistant referee, crowd, I looked at the assistant referee and he's, no, boof, goal, you know. So you just know, pin out, grenade in. So anyway, Cali won the game 2-1, Falkirk lost it, and I was going to the dressing room at the end, and just as you walk in the tunnel, it's a wee tunnel, just this distance, and then you're into the right, into the dressing room. And the dressing room doors were always open, always open, but not that day.
Right.
It was locked. And Lord and Lady McFarlane, who I think were bells.
Right, okay.
The bells,
yep.
You know, they were... Lady McFarlane, God rest her, is standing with the trophy, right, waiting to go onto the pitch.
And present it.
Big Yogi's chasing you up the tunnel. Well, I'm sure Lady McFarlane has never heard any of the type of words being used. Oh, because I'm trying to get in the door, and she's standing there, and you know, and I'm going, somebody open the door. Big Yogi's giving me it, big time, you know. So things like that were not common.
Aye.
It was just, I didn't know if the ball was in and out of play. I can know, assistant puts his flag up, the ball's out of play. If it's not up, then I need to play on. But Big Yogi used to say it in the pitch. He used to say it in the pitch. He wouldn't shout at you. He wouldn't call your name on the pitch.
Right.
Because he knew you had the power on the pitch. But he used to go back and go, they're laughing at you. Crowd are laughing at you. And I'd go, aye, no bother. No, they are. Look. And I'd run past them and I'd go,
have a look.
I'd look. And see that was more hurtful than being called names.
I was trying to get in your head, didn't he?
And he did get in my head. You know, he did. And he was a genius at that, at getting in your head. And you'd go back at night and go, what if they were laughing at me? He was in the net. He was in the net in my old firm game with Ali McCoist. Him and Ali's in the net, you know, and he's got a hoddy of hairs in McCoist's chest, you know. And it's this old firm game. It's at the Celtic end, and it's all going off. And what do you do? You know, you know, the book says you will give a yellow card to each player. You know, you go, that just goes out the window in an old firm day. Because Hughes has already been cautioned, I think, in the game.
But you probably get maybe a buy-in for the players as well if you handle it like that, when you're just like, calm down.
Aye, but they know, I mean, you're talking about players like McCoist and Hughes, who are Scots, they know what the old firm thing's all about. And, you know, he was... John Hughes wasn't a dirty player. He was a hard player. You know, and he demanded as a captain, as a coach. But he was never a guy that, you know, I thought he's going to do him. I never had that feeling with John. But they were always you were always aware he was a leader. That's for sure. I would rather have him in the trenches with me than being the other side of the trenches. That's for sure.
And did you prefer dealing with that type, or your kind of mavericks like your DiCanios and your Gascoignes? And I suppose they would just do something stupid rather than...
They're unpredictable. That's the big thing. You know, I remember up at Pittodrie, Aberdeen Rangers, which in my day and the day gone by, that was one of the hardest fixtures in the calendar.
It's a powder keg, innit?
Aberdeen Rangers games were tougher at that time than some of the Old Firm games. So I was up there a lot doing those games. And I remember the headline, I gave Gascoigne a red card, 2 yellows or whatever it was. And the headline in the paper the next day, because I've got it in my scrapbook, and it says, what does Gascoigne and JFK have in common? And then a wee caption at the bottom, it says, they both wish they'd avoided Dallas. Which I thought was a great headline, because I'd put him off that day. But I'd always a good relationship with him. You know, he was a very generous guy, Gascoigne. Cup final at Hampden, Rangers Hearts. He's out before the game with his club blazer, and he's got the blazer off and rolled up, and he's got another boy's scarf done, and he's in goals. This is like an hour and a half before the game when everybody's piling around Hampden, and the ball boys are shooting, and for every penalty saved they gave them a tenner or a fiver. Walter Smith was going off his nut, you know. But that's the kind of guy he was.
I remember him for the cup final at Celtic Park, where, well, rumours are that he went and got a brandy at half time because Walter Smith told him to, but him and McCoy nearly had a punch up in the first half of the game. Again, by the letter of the law, you could send both of them off.
I had to talk to the two of them, and I spoke to the two of them, to be honest, when the play was going on, rather than make a camera shot and bring. I said to him, what are you doing? What's happening? He's not, he's this, I can't even remember what it was all about. And I said, mate, I named myself here, guys. 2 red cards, the 2 players in the cup final for the same team. And McCoy was switched on. He knew right away. But what you're saying was right, because when they were coming out at half time, they'd be counted. You always count them on the pitch, make sure that they're on there. And there were only 10 that came out. And then Gascoigne, we never seen him obviously in the Celtic boardroom, but then the next thing he came out, and then we heard the story was that he comes back out and scores 2. 2 goals. Scored 2.
I wanted to ask you about international stage as well, because I suppose it's, as much as European football is different for Scottish football, international's probably a different game as well, because you're dealing with totally different politics, and players when players are representing their country, it's a totally different ball game to when they're playing for their club teams. But how's the international scene for you?
International, when we're talking about international, I talk about countries were much better disciplined, for sure. You know, I never really had any. I had mistakes, you know, but I didn't really have any big issues. Club was different. Club were they're playing for their club. The way Rangers and Celtic and Aberdeen are in Europe this season. But the biggest thrill that I ever got in my refereeing career, and I was lucky obviously in July in Yokohama, was I got an appointment in through the post that was at that time, and it was from FIFA to go to referee the deciding game. I think if somebody had lost, they were out. You know, the South America group, where there's 10 teams in it. It's not like here. And it was Uruguay, Brazil, in Montevideo, and you know, I went, what? That's when you know that they know you can do that, and I was chuffed to bits. And my very good friend Stuart Dougal was out. Any time I went abroad, I wanted Stuart with me. Because Stuart was, first of all, he was fantastic company, but he was also strong. So I said, Stuart, I've got a game in to go to Uruguay. He went, Uruguay? When? I says, it's first week in July or something. I'm on holiday. I went, what? He went, I'm in Mallorca. I went, right, okay, but I'll go. I said, well, wait a minute, you're not appointed yet. I said, I said, but normally when you were at that level, you would take the SFA.
That's
this guy. So the SFA phoned, and the guy used to phone me the appointments. He says, yes, this letter's come in, this appointment's come in for Uruguay versus Brazil, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, can I take 2 assistant referees? I said, Stuart Dougal. Stuart Dougal's on holiday, can't go. I said, no, Drew, if you phone him, he'll go. No. His calendar's marked here. He's on holiday. I says, Drew, if you phone him, how would you know? I says, because I've got the same letter that you've got. I says, so I know. So I've spoke to him. So he wasn't happy. So anyway, the next thing, I've got Stuart's wife on the phone. Can't believe I'm going to Mallorca with 2 Waynes and you're away. So Stuart went. He went with us, and it was probably the most incredible trip, ever. At that stage, that was just before the 2000. That would be July 2001.
Right, okay.
In the run-up to the qualification then for 2002. There were still 2 games to go or something. And it was just, again, another level. Now, I'd refereed Real Madrid, Bayern Munich about 4 weeks before it, 5 weeks before it, in the semi-final second leg in Madrid, in the Bernabeu. And the game was fine. The game went okay. But Bayern won, 1-0. And Roberto Carlos, I don't know how the Scottish media do these things, but Roberto Carlos had come out and says, and referee was unbelievable. Why do we have a referee from such a small country? That hurt me more than anything else. From such a small country in such a big match. And of course I start wheeling off Dalglish, Ferguson, all these small countries. So... but he gave me a hard time. Of course, the Scottish media had picked it up. So then you're out of back papers.
Of course they did.
Carlos, blah, blah, blah. Because it's a silly season. Yeah. And they football getting played, so they put refereeing as featured. So Roberto Carlos gave me a right rough time. So anyway, move on to Montevideo. And the tunnels were at 2 different parts of the ground. Imagine that being the pitch. One was coming out this way and one was coming out this way. So I said to Stuart Dougal, you go down, you bring out the Uruguay team. I said, I'll bring out the Brazil team. So, and it was quite funny. It was like it was one of the pull-out tunnels.
To stop the missiles.
The perforated one that all fold like an accordion. I can always remember that. And I'm walking down the front, and as I'm getting close to the front, I see the wee Brazil captain, with the pennant, right? I just went, magnificent. So I just goes down and just tapped him on the shoulder, and he turned around and he went, "Oh, Senior Dallas!" He was all,
be your best pal.
Exactly. He didn't speak a lot of English. And ironically, in the game went like a dream, absolute dream. But there was a penalty in the game, penalty to Uruguay, and it was Carlos. It was Carlos who tripped the guy. Stuart Dougal said to me at half time, I thought it was you tripped him, you were that close. It's a whole adrenaline just as you bouncing up and down the pitch everywhere. You just were determined not to make a mistake. So that was a 5-day adventure, and it really was, flying into Buenos Aires, staying and moving on to Montevideo, and the game went well. So you really were sort of confident that you'd sort of sealed your place then for Korea, Japan, for the World Cup.
How were the World Cups? Because that, as much as Europeans brilliant, I'd imagine the World Cup stage is like the pinnacle for a lot of referees.
It's the same as that's for a player. The referees are no different. And it was ironic that in the October qualifiers, it was the last qualifier, I was appointed to referee Poland-Ukraine, which was the derby there.
Yeah.
And I took appendicitis.
Oh, man.
I took appendicitis. During the game, I could start to feel it, and I thought I needed a loo, to be honest. These pains, cutting pains. And it was appendicitis. Got the game finished. And but this was mid-October, and appendicitis, I don't know what it's like now, but at that time you were out for
a long time,
6 to 8 weeks.
Aye.
And the FIFA course for the nominated referees was February.
Right, okay.
I was out for 2 months, no training, and I'm 44. I'm no 34.
It's hard to get that 2 months back.
I thought I would never get it back. But anyway, I got it back, and we did the test. FIFA were fantastic, very understanding. And we went to the course in Korea, got through the course okay, and then that was us rubber stamped in for the World Cup. So it was great. It wasn't as good as France 4 years earlier, because the family could come across and see you, and it was great. Everybody was
Scotland were there as well.
Scotland were there. I was the only referee that had a ticket for the opening game.
Amazing.
We were all there, but couldn't get tickets, and it was the SFA that got me a ticket, and it was a great experience. And the way Scotland played that day, I thought, wow. I mean, I honestly thought, typical Scotland. You know, people says they shot themselves in the foot that day with the Boyd own goal. I went, no, Tom Boyd couldn't have done anything. No, you know, he was just so unlucky. No. But Korea, Japan was Collina and I right down to the death with, you know, for the last. Both of us were appointed for the quarterfinals, and I had USA Germany, and Pierluigi had England Brazil.
Right, was that the one? That's the one thing we lobbed. Ronaldinho lobbed Seaman.
England Brazil.
Yep.
And that game was in the afternoon, so I'm lying in my bed watching it, and I'm in Japan for my game at night, and of course I need England out because I'm seen as British. So I went. So of course Brazil won, so I'm like, great, England are out. And then the next day, Korea were playing Italy. So I'm thinking, Italy will go through. But Collina will need to go home. That's him. He's P-Scout. And of course, Korea beat Italy. And if there was only one referee, only one referee then going to, you know, referee the final. And nobody could have, you know, begrudged them, you know that final match. And for me to be named as his reserve that night was fantastic. Because
even like then, you seem to have a good relationship with Collina, like from looking like as a the outsider in.
Aye, we had met each other in the Olympic Games in 1996. So that was the first time we came together. We'd seen each other at UEFA courses, but when we went to the Olympic Games, there were only 3 Europeans selected for Atlanta, and it was myself, Collina, and Garcia Aranda from Spain. So again, we bonded, and we would go walks and stuff like that. And he wasn't a drinker, so he wasn't. You know, if I got a beer, he would ask for an empty glass, and he would take that in his glass. He would take a wee inch of beer, and just to get the flavour. But he wasn't. But he was a super guy. He was a super guy. I went on to work then with Pierluigi in UEFA for 8 years, and I've never ever worked with a more professional guy.
Would you think made him such a good referee?
I don't think he was any better than any other top referee. I think he made the same mistakes, but he had this aura about him. He had this thing about the bulging eyes and the bald head, and you know, and he used that to his advantage. But you know, I would say we all made the same mistakes, but he just had this thing, you know, that
aura. You
just can't buy it. You know. But he's a super referee. But as I say, we bonded more closely when we stopped, and then we both went to work for UEFA, and that was also a great time when I left the SFA then to go, you know, to work in Geneva. So,
and from obviously you could have hundreds of answers for this, but from being in that position in the middle of the pitch, what player have you come off after a game and just thought, it was an absolute privilege to watch them today?
Zidane.
Aye. For Madrid or France, was it?
Both.
Aye.
I was quite lucky to have refereed Real Madrid home and away a lot, and also France.
Aye.
I mean, I've got more French shirts in my house, and I've got Zidane's, and you know, but Zidane was a different level. He really was. But he was unpredictable. You had to be careful with him, you know. We were talking about Stuart Dougal's name earlier. He was refereeing Juventus against, can't remember who they were playing, an Austrian team maybe. And he gave Zidane a red card.
Right.
And he gave Edgar Davids a red card in the same match. And when he gave Davids, Zidane said, you know, you don't have the balls. And you know, something was said between the two players. And, all right, both red. And Stuart tells a story where the Italian, the guy for Juventus, the guy for Juventus at the end of the game ran to him and says, "You will never ever referee in Italy again." And Stuart went, and he was right. The way Stuart tells the story, and he was right. So it's, but he. It's an easy answer.
Aye.
It's an easy. I would say he would have been the Messi,
Aye.
the Ronaldo of his era. I never get the chance to referee those two guys. I was just finishing when they were coming through as City young players. But Zidane was different level.
Do you notice it during the game when a player's playing that well, or are you just, is that much going on, or can you look at it and go, geez, oh?
Yeah, because part of the referee's role is to protect the players. So you knew that he'd be marked.
Aye.
You knew that, and your job was to try and get to the players. Because what I used to say when we used to go and talk to the teams before the World Cup began.
Yep.
The team would meet a referee. So you would say to the players, "We want to see you in the last match, not just the first match." So don't get injured, blah blah blah. So we would then, make sure that the players were protected. If a number 3 came across and took Zidane out, then we would be across to him, yellow card, whatever it was, and say no. And it would be a word to the captain: I'm going to protect this guy tonight. Don't think your tactic is you're just going to go out and stop him. You need to do it legally. And generally, that would work. But you had to be aware of the ball players on the pitch, and also the players that you to keep an eye on.
Well, the manager's more, I don't want to say more active abroad, but you see when you watch like Italian football and Spanish football, the managers are everywhere in the dugouts. They're shouting, they're screaming, and as much as you get that in some places here, it doesn't happen that often. But is it hard to manage that side of it as well? Because you're trying to deal with the 22 players in the pitch, and you're looking over at the dugout and there's just screaming coming from that side of it as well. And the fourth official is probably standing there going, Jesus.
I think here is good.
Aye.
I think the technical areas here are well disciplined generally.
Aye.
Of course, you'll always have a flashpoint. I mean, you go to where I'm working just now in Turkey. And,
there's always a flashpoint.
Technical areas are. If there's a bad tackle going to happen near the end of the game, it always happens in front of the technical. Everybody spills out. We don't have that here.
Yeah.
That's, as I say, they're pretty well disciplined. But a great memory of the 98 World Cup was when I was refereeing the quarter-final with France and Italy. And Maldini Senior, Maldini's son, Maldini's father, Paolo Maldini's dad, he was the coach of the Italian national team. And of course, I went to the World Cup. I mean, I'm talking about scraped into the group of referees to get to the World Cup 98. Helped mainly by the head of refereeing at the SFA, George Cumming, at that time. He was really pushing me and forever grateful. And at that game in the quarter-final, you could see Maldini going, who's this? Dallas from where? Scott, what? Because I wasn't even refereeing top Champions League games. I was just beginning to break in to the elite category. So what FIFA were doing there is, and they do it now, is they'll put you in to a tournament like that, but really with your eye on the next tournament. In 4 years' time, you'll know what it's all about when you get there. But this is just a wee taster for you. So I did that. This was the year that they banned the tackle from behind. Right. And of course, in my first game, Belgium-Mexico, I've got a Mexican off and I've got a Belgian off for tackles from behind, because FIFA like, bravo, that's exactly what we're wanting. That wasn't the way, probably the folk in Belgium and the folk in Mexico thought. So anyway, and I worked my way through, and all of a sudden, quarter-final. And it was funny, the night, it's maybe different now at FIFA, I'm sure it is with Pierluigi being there, but they were announcing the round of 16 referees, and that was the cut. Right. So you go home, I'm staying. Right. You're all right, okay. So the night before, the referees are all very nervous. And you go into this ballroom, but there were a committee member walking towards me that night, the night before, and as he's walking towards me, he's had a right few scoops at the bar, and he just looked and he went, Brazil, Chile. I'm away at my bed. I'm going like that. Get Brazil, Chile in the last 16. Don't believe it. Phones my wife, Jackie, get yourself over to kind of where the game was in France. She went, all right, I'll get in the night, I said, you'll get the tickets, don't worry about the tickets. You get your flights booked and stuff like that. Let the guys know, because Stuart and Stuart Dougal and all these guys had all came for my first game.
Right.
So we then, in the morning, we all goes into the ballroom, and we're just sitting about the ballroom.
Right.
You know, and the guy comes in, okay, gentlemen, because I'm sitting. They're all looking at me and they're saying, do you know something? I went, no, me. So they go through the appointments, bump. And Brazil, Chile. And I've puffed my chest up and they've went, Mr. Bata from France. And I went, no, it's me. I'm the referee. You've got that wrong. So I've looked, and the wee guy from France is just delighted. So as soon as the meeting was finished, I went across and I went, you told me last night. He went, when?
Oh, man.
I can't remember.
Oh.
So then in later years, I became a member of the UEFA referee committee who made the referee appointments, and I always used that to say never leak a referee appointment. God. You know. So anyway, then I'm on the phone, cancel the flights. You know. Anyway, it worked out good in the long run because I was one of the referees that was kept.
Right.
I was retained, and I thought, why am I being retained?
Aye.
You know, I'm a relatively inexperienced referee. In the same ballroom, 5 days later, they announced the quarterfinals in France, Italy, which was a derby, you know, and they shouted my name out.
What a game.
Again, but I was the same as the last game. I'm going,
can't be.
You know? And it was great. Anyway, Maldini. So every decision I made in the first half, every decision I made, the whole Italian technical area emptied. You know,
man.
Whether it was a throw-in, and it was just all pressure.
Aye.
Because they were aware that it was France in the Stade de France. You know, the pressure was on me. So I'm going for half time. I went, this can't continue. So there was a boy looking after us who was part of FIFA, and he was Italian. Right. So he's like that when the Italians are there. So I says to the guy called Paolo, I says, Paolo, you come with me to the dressing room at half time, okay? Oh, yeah, to the Italian dressing room? I went, yeah. I says, and I want you to translate for me. I says, and it's not going to be easy. Why? I says, just translate for me. So because we went into the dressing room, taps the door, opens the door, because the Italians are all sitting. Maldini's whacking off, and I went, excuse me. And I says, right, and Paolo's behind me. I went, right, Paolo. And I started, you know, I says, Mr. Maldini, you do not move, blah, 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 and you do, and also you, and then you, and the substitute. And I said, and I looked around, Paolo, he was off. He'd shut the door. He wasn't going to translate, you know. So there was one of the Italian backroom staff, he knew what I was saying. So he blabbed it out. Second half, not one bit of bother. Not one.
Good of Paolo to back you up in that
Paolo
moment.
Backed me up. Aye, so Paolo was in the way out. He was in the way out after that. The Italians were too much for him.
Oh, man.
It's all great memories. You know.
Jeez. And then when you got to, obviously you get to the when you were coming through, and I don't know if it's still the same as you've got the cut-off age.
45, yeah.
For referees.
Not now, but then.
If you could have back then, would you have kept going, or was it feeling right for you at that time to stop?
Aye, I felt my legs were telling me. It was when I was 42, 43, even City 44, a midweek game in Europe and a Saturday game here was no problem.
Aye.
When I went into my 45th year, I really found I was phoning the SFA and saying, if I have a European appointment, don't appoint me on a Saturday when I come back, because I wasn't doing it justice. You know? And I think the legs tell you, you know, when it's time. You'll always get exceptions. Yeah. The guy Bjorn Kuipers from Netherlands, who's a good friend, Bjorn went to his 47, and I think we had a top referee here. You'll probably remember his name, Jim McCluskey. Yep. I think Jim was one of the exceptions. Jim seemed to could have went on forever. Yeah. He was always the same shape, and he was a super referee. But I felt it was. I continued in Scotland because you could have went to 50. Yeah. And that was that year we went, it's 50 this year, next year it's 49, following year it's 48, and all the way back. And I did 2 years till I was 47, and I went into I'd made it known I was stopping. I was stopping that season, and I thought I'd give the SFA quite a good innings, you know. So I went to see the chairman of the referee committee, Bill Valentine. I went to see the CEO, I think it was David Taylor at the time. I think it was maybe David, God rest him. And I said, guys, I'm going to finish. I wanted to tell you first before I tell the media. I says, but I'd like to go to the cup final. I'd love to the cup final my last game. And they went, all right, okay, right. And why you want to finish? I just, you know. So anyway, I'd had a phone call for UEFA to say, when are you finishing refereeing? Because we'd like to bring you to UEFA, to the referee committee. So the referee committee in UEFA is a big deal. You know, you don't. I don't think there's ever been anybody for Scotland.
Aye, don't say no.
No, FIFA, yeah, but but anyway, so I went to Clyde versus Ross County in the cup, third round, which would be January time when the third round was drawn. And I thought, keep me away from the big teams. Right. That was my last Scottish Cup tie. That was my last Scottish Cup tie. Oh, I just felt if I hadn't asked for it, they probably would have given it, but the fact that I'd asked for it.
And was there ever any chat round about it, or why?
No. Well, I had a chat with the head of refereeing at that time, who was Donald McVicker, and I'd made a note to Donald, you know, that I wanted the cup final. But they had this thing at the SFA where nobody had refereed more than 4 cup finals. Right. And that would have been my 5th. So, you know, anyway, I think it was Celtic Dunfermline it was that year. Robotham did the cup final, which I was disappointed about. But anyway, I refereed they gave me my last league game was the Helicopter Sunday Day.
Jeez.
At Celtic Park. Which was strange also, because I very seldom refereed Motherwell, because they knew. And on the run up to those games, there's 3 games on the Saturday then, and 3 on the Sunday. I think it's still the same, isn't it?
Because that was a split, wasn't it? It was the
end of the season. And it was
neck and neck, because we were at Easter Road.
Rangers were at Easter Road, and Motherwell were at Fir Park against Celtic. And the list of referees comes out like a 4-week batch, so you can see where you are, which is good, because it allows you time to plan for going out or going away. And I looked, and I was on the last match day, and so was Kenny Clark, and the rest of the referees were relatively low-key referees. So I said, Kenny Clark and I will be in the last 2 games. I says, I'll be Easter Road, and Kenny Clark will be at Fir Park, given that I come from Motherwell. I can see Fir Park from my house. So I go to Fir Park a walk, you know. And I always remember, again, mention his name again, Stuart Dougal phoned me on the Monday, and he went, you see where you're on Sunday? I went, Easter Road. He went, no. And I was gutted. And I went, where am I? Kilmarnock. He went, no, you're at Fir Park. And I went, no way, I'm at Fir Park. Because you know the paranoia and, you know, and I went, Fir Park? He went, yep, Fir Park. So I never slept that week. Never slept every night. You know, I'm thinking, oh my God, you know. But I can't remember if Celtic was a draw enough that day, or did they need to win? Or it depended what happened at Easter Road.
I think
if Rangers had drawn, a draw would have been enough for Celtic, obviously.
Aye, but I think the thing at Easter Road as well was, as long as Motherwell were winning, Hibs were in Europe and all, so Rangers had scored and Hibs didn't need to chase the game. So it turned into a game of just keep the ball, and nobody really done anything. And then, to be fair, obviously I think 99.9% of the population would have expected Celtic to go to Motherwell and win. That day I got a phone call about, I can't remember what time it was, because I can't remember the time of the kick-off, or it was 2 o'clock or 12:30. But I got a phone call early morning, May, to say pitch inspection. Oh man.
And I went, no. I said, it's been raining right enough. He says, Hugh, our pitch is floating. This was, who was it for me from Motherwell? Can't mind. So I jumps in the morning and goes away down. And the wee groundsman's there. Wee ground, no, the guy, it's passed away now. Because on the park, and they're in the far corner, on the right. You know, where the Motherwell young team are in the parks.
Oh, just...
You know what I mean? Oh, no. So the wee groundsman comes on the pitch. and of course, on the way down to the pitch, I've had a phone call for the league to say, Hugh, the game's got to go on. It's just, it's got to be played. Because the game at Easter Road...
They were kicking off same time,
So I'm down, went, no way I can play this. It's just not possible. So wee groundsman comes in. He was my wee saviour. Because he walks across the park and I went, Hugh, I've told him, don't worry. He went, it's a tide. It's a high tide. So I'm looking at him going, the high tide? Motherwell. About at Strathclyde Park. And he went, don't laugh. It's all linked. I went, what? He says, what happens is the water it's a Clyde.
Right.
But the water backs up and it hits your pitch. Now, Fifth Park's now one of the best pitches in the country now. He went, see, an hour before the kick-off, pitch will be perfect. I've told them. And I looked at him, I went, I'm in your hands, wee guy. I says, I am in your hands. So away I went, you know, of course I phoned the league, I went, game's on, no problem, no problem.
Tidal by way out,
Tidal boot. No, I went down there then an hour and a half before the kick-off, the sun splitting the trees apart, and I'm thinking, you imagine I'd went down there and put that game off. And then at 2 o'clock or whatever time the kick-off was, fucking, what's the matter with the pitch? So the pitch was fine, and that was then of course that was the day. The Celtic players that day were incredible. They were asking me how long there was to, after they scored, all they wanted to know how long to go, how long to go, how long to go. And I'm saying, Neil, you know, just you need to focus, just keep, don't worry about that. How long to go. And of course, then the 2 goals, right out of the blue. 2 of them came. Because Motherwell never looked at scoring that day. They never looked at scoring. And of course, after the game, we were in the dressing room and Big Terry was the manager of Motherwell. So they bring a bottle of champagne into the dressing room because it's my last game. But Terry's singing. You know, and of course the referee dressing room backs onto the Celtic dressing room. Right. So I'm saying, Terry, you know, I need to ask you to
what the conspiracy people going off on that.
I'm in the dressing room with a bottle of champagne, Big Terry Butcher singing, you know. So I'm saying, Terry, you can't do this. This is we can't believe we've won. It wasn't. I don't think it was so much. Well, maybe he was celebrating Rangers he's won. He was celebrating the fact that Motherwell had won. Not that it made any difference to their league. But it was quite a surreal way for me for your last game to finish as tight as that. It was incredible day.
At your hometown club, I know.
In the hometown club, it's the club that I always went to when I didn't have a game. John Boyle was the chairman at that time, and John was fantastic. John always made me so welcome when I went to Fir Park. If I didn't have a game, John, there's a ticket there for you, don't you worry, you know. And I still go. I'm a season ticket, you know. I'm there every week. When I'm here, I go every Saturday. So.
And did you see yourself when you'd stopped refereeing? Did you see yourself moving into the kind of the background there, or were you looking for a clean break from it and you were kind of done completely? No,
absolute opposite. I was wanting to stay involved. I wanted to put something back because I knew if I had the opportunity to put things back in, Scottish refereeing would benefit through that. Scottish refereeing would benefit both in Scotland and abroad, and Scottish referees would benefit through individuals, because I would be, if I was at UF, I'd be pushing them the way other guys do. And I was quite fortunate to get a couple of them to get them to the Euro, you know, when I was there. But now, unfortunately, Scottish refereeing's a backwater in world football now. You know, it's even in European football, it's just non-existent. So
could you see that at the time? Could you see that coming?
Oh, aye.
With Scottish football and the standards?
Yeah, I could see it coming a mile away. I could see it because they weren't getting any coaching, because I left the SFA in 2011. And when I left, I offered to give my time to observe, to coach, particularly at that time Colum and Thompson, because they were sort of the elite group. They were two of the elite referees in Europe, but they lack coaching, and we don't have anybody that can coach here at that level, because we don't have anybody at that level apart from myself.
To coach,
So I looked at myself as the Brian McGinley, and thinking, you know, I learnt so much for you, but people weren't caring, and I felt really disappointed at that. They just weren't caring. And I never get the chance to coach, you know, guys like Colum and Thompson, and guys coming behind them. There were other referees who had as much talent, but were refereeing obviously under 21, but they were coming up through the ladder, and then they hit that ceiling, and they just needed that final push, and that was their choice. You know,
Was that the frustration for you in the job? Because I know obviously everybody knows the circumstances, what happened with you coming out that job, and it's widely known. But I watched an interview that you done, and when you spoke about it, and you'd felt after that 4 years it wasn't what you thought it would be, and it wasn't what you expected. Was that stemming from the kind of lack of coaching and the lack of kind of building up these guys that were coming through?
Aye, when I was there, Donald, the best thing that happened to refereeing, you know, through the decades, was George Cumming and Donald McVicker. Absolutely no doubt. George Cumming started, you know, the small ball rolling, and made it a big ball. Donald McVicker came in and continued that. I then came in and worked under Donald for about 3-4 years as his deputy, and it was great.
Yeah.
Then you became head, and it was people's, you know, you had to thing with your staff, self-analysis, and fill reports in. I just wanted to be out in the pitch with the referees. You know, I just wanted to do that. So when you became the head, it was as if they were taking you away, you know, for that side, and I didn't like that. So it wasn't what I thought it would have been. But as soon as I left, UEFA came and says, you know, we'd like you to become one of the referee officers. We'd like you to be Pierluigi's deputy. And I jumped at it, and it was just the best thing that ever happened to me in refereeing, because going for a low at that time to then just taking a step to the next level was incredible, and it then gave you that pleasure to give it, unfortunately for Scotland, to other European referees and guys that went on to referee Champions League finals and everything. I've coached them. I was Howard Webb's coach. You know, I took Howard on as a young referee, coached him, went to mini tournaments with him, went to European matches, and then went down to England to see him twice, refereeing the Premier League, gave him tips and stuff. Now, I'm not saying Howard refereed the World Cup final because of me.
No, I know what you mean.
He was a natural referee, but it was just that, you know, you discover a diamond and it's black and it's rugged and it's rough, and your job is to polish it, shape it, shine it, and then, you know, that's what happens. That's unfortunately lacking in Scotland.
Where do you sit now on the standard in Scottish football? And obviously I know your son's involved in it as well, so it's probably a loaded question, but how do you look at the standard of refereeing in Scottish football? Because it's come in, you obviously you've seen the games this season, the referees have come in for heavy criticism at times, but how do you look at it from being in that industry?
I think refereeing has always been heavily criticised. You know, it's we always say the summers were better, the nights were longer when we were at school. You know, they're not any different from what they are now. VAR, I think, has helped massively.
You're a fan?
But I'm a big fan because I train, you know, VAR in UEFA and in Turkey, and VAR works in Scotland. Absolutely no doubt VAR works in Scotland. Any problem that we've seen with VAR has been interpretation of an incident. That's not to do with VAR. VAR has allowed the referee to come across, he's maybe not interpreted it correctly, or the VAR hasn't interpreted it correctly, but the actual VAR system works really well. I think in Scotland they've only had 2 incidents where they've had a break in
Yeah.
communication. So that means VR's not working.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the actual the technical decisions, that's down to refereeing.
Yeah.
That's down to education. So as you said earlier, if a handball to referee A is a penalty, but the same handball to referee B isn't a penalty, that is where you need to bring those two guys together and say, no, guys, this is what a penalty, this is what a deliberate handball is. So referee education has to continue. In Turkey, I'm in Turkey every couple of weeks. In Turkey, we don't discuss VAR.
At all?
Don't discuss it.
Right.
We discuss handball. We discuss challenges.
Yep.
We discuss penalty area incidents. And maybe once a decision's done, we might say out of 10 incidents, we'll say, referee didn't get that right. VAR, you think you could maybe have intervened there? No. Okay, move on.
Yeah.
Next one. But we don't have VAR days as such. That's not what VAR is about. And UEFA are the very same. I produce all the educational material for UEFA for the 55 countries. So out of 3,500 incidents in a 6-month period, we'll reduce that. We'll then put it into various topics, and that will go out to the national associations.
Right.
The material we put out this year to the national associations, there was no VAR section in it.
Right, okay.
Don't want to talk about
Yeah.
VAR. We just want to talk about challenges, handball, offside, illegal arms and stuff like that. Stick to the laws of the game.
Yeah. Do you think we will get back to a stage in Scottish football where our refs are in European competitions and international, and I just feel it's a long way off?
I think it's a long way off.
Yeah.
It's a long way off. At the moment, we've got two new young FIFA referees who I'm going to the seminar next week in Cyprus, to the introductory FIFA course. And we've got a young guy, Scotland's got a young guy, Matthew McDermott, quite a good referee. I've seen him a few times. And we've got a guy who was here last year, David Dickinson. I think he's got the St Mirren Rangers game this weekend.
Yeah, I've seen him a couple of times this season.
No, he's a good referee. He's got good presence on the pitch. He's a nice guy. But to see him at the top level in UEFA, that'll take a while. If he can get there, So,
how did you feel when your lad got involved?
To be honest, I really tried to discourage him.
Yeah.
Not because of bad experiences. Andrew would go to training because we trained in the same group.
Yeah.
We'd go to training one Tuesday night, and then when you go to the next, and then the match secretary would phone him with a game, and he'd go, I'm not available. I went, Andrew, you're embarrassed. Just stop.
Yeah.
Or
Commit
yourself. I said, but you can't do this in between. And he'd one or two bad experiences in amateurs,
right.
Which didn't help that. And once you get through the amateurs into juniors, he really threw himself right into it. And then he became well. And he was doing really, really well. He's very successful business. He works for a company in Glasgow. He's a director there. So that curtailed his time. Yeah. And he couldn't start and fly everywhere, the way he could. Then he got St Mirren played Rangers in a League Cup tie. St Mirren beat them. I think Rangers had gone about...
I think that was Gerrard's
season
tenure.
Aye. And he was doing that game that
right.
night. And it's incredible that name's going to come up again. And I've sitting with a bottle of beer waiting for the game coming on the television to watch him. I always watched them, obviously. 5 to 8. My phone rings and it's Andrew.
What you doing?
I knew right away I went, he's injured. I went, what is it? I'm injured. I'm really struggling, Dad. And David Dickinson was the fourth official.
Right,
and it was David that took over the game and did very well in the game. And Andrew got injured and he never recovered for it. It was a typical what happened to Andy Murray.
Right.
It was a hip, it was something in the hip.
Like the abductor or something?
No, it wasn't the abductor. The abductor you could have come back from. But the doctors told him it was rest. It's just rest. He said, I know you want me to cut you open and fix it. It's rest.
Aye.
And when he came back, he got back and then the pain for the next 2 days. And then the VAR thing bubbled and the SF says, how would you like to
do
the VAR? And he loves it, And the benefit that Andrew's got, he'd been VAR and Greg Aitken is the other full-time VAR, doing it every week.
Yeah, and they've both been on the pitch as well.
And but doing it every week. In Turkey, we don't have referees being VARs. We have VARs being VARs.
Right, okay.
We have referees being referees.
Right, okay.
If we need a backup, we may well call on a referee to say, look, can you... Because it's like, if you've got a broken leg and you go to the hospital, you go to see the orthopaedic surgeon.
Yeah.
You don't go to see the ear, nose and throat specialist, because that's not his thing. And that's why I think, and England are going the same way. You know, they're going down the route now, training more and more VARs. And I think VAR would be an awful lot more successful, generally. Not just in Scotland. Generally, if everybody sticks to their own, you know, speciality. Yeah, for sure.
I'll finish with a. How do you look back? How do you look back on your career, and what advice would you give to any referees that are maybe in that amateur phase or that just try to get into the junior phase? What would you say to them based on what you've the path you followed?
I think you need to, if you've got the bug for it, you know, don't throw the bag in the cupboard one day and don't open the cupboard again. I think that's when you need to call on your mentor. You know, a lot of these young referees at that level have got what they call a buddy. Will be appointed by the local association. So that if they have a bad experience, they can phone their buddy, and their buddy will say, right, this is what we do, and help you and get you through that. Because I think of all the intake referees through the exam classes, there's only 20% still there after 2 years. That's not just in Scotland. That's
across the board.
You'll notice lately the European referees have been wearing a thing in the back of their shirts, become a referee.
Is that why? Just because of the law, right? Okay.
It's to try and promote refereeing,
right?
Because they lose 80%. You know, so we're trying to set up things to try and stop that that type of talent being lost. So if you can do that and just try and be professional, rise above, don't react. Yeah, you know, because you're doing a job that the other people can't do. That are shouting at you. Yeah, you know, simple as that. No, everybody will make it to the top. Yeah, it's the same as professional football players. You know, they don't. Everybody leaves school wants to be a pro. I don't know one pro that went to my school.
No, the numbers are marginal.
Of course, and maybe somebody says, "Oh, I know two." Aye, exactly, 2 to what 100. Aye. So, and it's just refereeing's the same. You know, it's the very same. One or two will make it to the top, and unfortunately, but there's still a big role for them. Whether there's assistant referees or VARs. VARs is massive now. Aye. You know, it's massive.
Aye. And about your own career, how do you look back on it?
I look back with great satisfaction, to be honest. I just never, as you said at the beginning of the interview, Gary, didn't go into it, you know, all those years ago to go to a World Cup. I didn't even know what a referee was at a World Cup. But I look back with great pride. Need huge support for the family. Family's been amazing. Yeah. Particularly the two boys have been amazing. Did I achieve everything I wanted to achieve? Probably, yeah. Right. Missed out in the Champions League final because the year I thought it was my final. It was at Hampden. Oh, jeez. The last time that happened, UEFA stopped appointing the local referee. Right. Okay. Did Bayern play Leeds in France? Shows you how long ago it is, you probably weren't even born. And it was a disaster. And it was a local appointment. Right, wasn't it because he deserved it? Right, so the General Secretary, because that year, the 2002 final at Hampden, I did the Super Cup at Madrid in Feyenoord. Right. That was the city consolation prize, if you want to say. Right. You know, so that was the only thing. But everybody can't do a Champions League final. No,
the irony as well, it was Zidane that scored the winner in that. That final.
I was there to see it. You know, I was there to see it. I know it was Zidane. I know it'd have been really, really good to have been on the pitch, especially at Hampden. Aye. What a way to go. Aye. But anyway, I've got no regrets in refereeing. No. I can't look back and go, I should have did that. Or I've got 8 cup finals in Scotland, which was 4 League Cup, 4 Scottish Cups. The guys will not get that chance, you know, so I can't look back with regret. For sure not.
What was the maddest thing you'd heard about yourself within Scottish football? Because you'll get crackpots across the board. But if you
many.
If you ever get a story and you've went, that can't be real.
Oh, aye. I watched a documentary on YouTube about me being a Mason. And this was
like a serious documentary.
This was filmed, this was a what I would say, not that I respected him, but he was a respected, author, journalist. And where he wrote, you couldn't have made this up. Orange, this and Masonic and brother. I'm going, never even been in a Masonic hall. And I tell a lie, I went in to get a pint of blood one year and shots. So where they get this information from, I don't know. And of course, you were using the word crackpots there. If there are enough of them listening and watching, they believe these things. What I said earlier is, if somebody keeps writing good things about you, they'll believe you're a good referee. And people will believe that. They'll
100%. With social media now.
Thankfully, in their days, I didn't have social media. When the whole thing at the SFA broke, social media was just beginning to bubble. I still don't do social media. I don't do Twitter, Facebook, anything like that. But that particular thing that I watched, wow, I was, I remember going taking legal advice on it, and my lawyer looked at me and like, leave it,
waste of time.
Leave it. Don't even pay any. You're right enough.
You get paid and do it, and then somebody else will spring a video for somewhere else.
Annoying you.
Aye.
So that's probably the worst thing that I've ever read. Or the most bizarre, the most untruth. People will write things that that's a bit harsh, but when they write things that are just factually incorrect, but people buy the books and buy the newspapers, and
definitely
stop that.
Hugh, it's been a pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Great, it was good.
Thank you so much.
Not at all. Real
Brilliant.
good. Great, Gary. Thanks a lot.
Mate.
Thank you.